All right, I'm Mark Harville. Glad to be here. Alan Douglas invited me just because my middle name is the same as his last name, Mark Douglas Harville. So that's our relationship. We're good friends. I had a slide presentation, and something didn't work with it. It was on PowerPoint. So what I did do is I printed out the presentation, which is only 4 pages long. There's some copies of it back on the table there if you want some. But most of it I'm going to be talking off the cuff, and I am going to be recorded, so you'll be able to hear it later on if you want. Did you say anything else?
Mark, if you send the PowerPoint to us, we will also include that on our website so that people could look at that also as they hear this, because this meeting then is Zoomed for those members that cannot be here in attendance.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, well, the title of this is Clinical Research and Pharmaceutical Approvals with the FDA, Food and Drug Administration. Don't fall asleep yet. All right, I'll give you a little background of where I'm coming from. I'm born and raised here in Campbell, California, picking apricots as a kid. And my dad was teacher at Sunnyvale High School. He was met my mom when he was in World War II. And the two of them fell in love, and after he got out of World War II, came back here and was a teacher. So I'll start with me. I went to high school. I went to parochial high school, Archbishop Mitty, for my freshman and sophomore year. Oh, okay. That's one of my best friends right there. No, I was only in we only had a sophomore class at the time. It was brand new, trying to compete with the school my brother went to, which was Bellarmine, of course. Everybody, yeah. That's why I didn't go to Bellarmine, okay? So anyway, after 2 years there, I went to Campbell High School. All right. In between picking apricots in the summertime, yeah.
Any more? We can get them all going.
Anybody here from Campbell? Okay. There, okay. I'm sure we all know each other. At any rate, my birthday's in December, so I was 19 years old when I was a senior in high school, which meant Vietnam was going on strong, and I had a draft number of 62, I think. So it was pretty clear that I knew where I was going to be going. So I went to West Valley College for a half a semester before I got my draft notice. And my dad sat me down and said, "Son, you got 3 choices. You can wait until you're drafted, and you're probably going to go to Vietnam for 2 years. Or you can enlist and maybe stay out of Vietnam and be in for 4 years. Or you can go to Canada and Mom and I will come visit you." So, since my dad had been in the Army Air Corps, yeah, we have a few people that remember that. So I went into the Air Force, and the Air Force, in its wisdom, decided that I should be a medic. I didn't have any background whatsoever. My degree is in theater arts and music, so I don't know where that came from. But at any rate, so I was a medic, and I went through medical training after getting out of Lackland Air Force Base for basic training. I was sent to Wichita Falls, Texas. Anybody ever been there? Okay. I spent a week there one day. No, that's not right. I spent about 2 months there going through medic training. And we did a lot of that over the border in what's the state above Texas? Oklahoma. Because they had trees there, so that meant that was the closest we were going to get to being training for the jungle that we were going to experience in Vietnam. So as a medic, I was sent to Omaha, Nebraska, Offutt Air Force Base. That was SAC headquarters. If you ever saw the movie SAC, Strategic Air Command, that's for real. It exists. So my dad, when I was a junior in high school, said, "So son, what do you want to be when you grow up?" I said, "Well, Dad, I'm a songwriter. I'm going to write music." And he said, "Great. Now, what are you going to do to earn money?" So he told me I should take some business courses, and I did. At that time, I took 2 years of typing, which nobody knew how to type, So that was a saving grace, because when I went to work for the commander at the hospital there in Omaha, Nebraska, he found out I could type because everybody else there was going like this, and I could do this. So I got orders 3 times for Vietnam while I was there, and my commander, since I was kind of like his radar O'Reilly, he decided he didn't want to lose me, so he got me out of those orders. But SAC headquarters was one of the major places where the vets would come back from Vietnam. So I really got some close experience working with vets coming back with a lot of problems, a lot of missing limbs, psychological, a lot of stuff there. So I kind of feel like I had visited Vietnam stateside. Anyway, I did my 4 years there, got out, and then went to college, San Jose State. And, we're getting warmer at how many people have experienced this. Okay, good. So I started out as a music major, did 1 year of that and said, this is too hard, even though I'd had 8 years of piano from my mom, and my dad was a band director. So then I switched to my other love, which was theater arts. Got a degree in theater arts. I was going to be a teacher. High school drama is what I wanted to do. At that time, Proposition 13 came through. How many people remember that? Jarvis-Gantt Initiative? We all voted for that because it cut the taxes. But as well as cutting the taxes, it cut all the arts from school. No more dance or theater or band, and where it really hurt was no uniforms for the guys playing football. So then I had a buddy who worked up in Palo Alto for a company called Syntex, which later became Hoffman LaRoche. And they moved out of that spot up close to Stanford, but I'll get to that in a little bit. But the very first medicine I worked on was called naproxen sodium, which is now Aleve. How many of you take Aleve? Doesn't work for me either, but we got it passed by the FDA, and I'll go into that in a little bit here. But I worked for Syntex for 12 years. They're what we call a sponsor company. They were the only ones that made naproxen sodium. And then after, I guess it's about 10 years or so, it becomes open to the market for anybody to take. That's why we got Aleve. It was no longer called naproxen sodium, and you could buy it over the counter. So after I had worked for 12 years there, I went to work for what we call contract research organizations, CROs. And that's what I did for the rest of my time, 35 plus years in the industry. And because I was a medic for 4 years in the Air Force, they figured I knew everything about medicine, right? So don't ask me any medical questions. I don't have the answers to that. But I did the research on it. Now, what the difference is with the sponsor company, they would have a new drug like we just experienced with this outbreak called COVID. Somebody comes out with a medication that's going to treat a particular ailment, and generally it takes about 10 years for that approval process from once the drug is tested on humans to it's approved by the FDA. With where am I going? With the outbreak of this, the FDA allowed us to get something on the market immediately because COVID was rampant. We had to do something quickly. So the FDA allowed an accelerated approval process, which in this case worked. So that was good. I'll go into a little bit of what it usually is like in just a little bit. But during my 35 years, I worked on ulcers, GI studies, ulcers and GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease. You don't have to raise your hands for any of these. Arthritis studies, pain studies, basically, RA and OA, postoperative pain, diabetes, angina, hypertension, asthma, rhinitis, sinusitis, spine compression fractures, which I think I may be a candidate for soon, and sleep disorders. So that was spread out, and that is what we did as a CRO. What the story is behind CROs, the contract groups, is like Merck, who came up with the drug for COPD. Well, you don't have your own people go out and monitor the study because your statisticians can make any drug look like it works better than it really does. Yes. So you hire a CRO because we are independent. We don't work for anybody. And so we do what the FDA would do if they were going to audit your trial going on at your site. So we don't have anything. We get paid by the sponsor company to go out and monitor, but they have hands off. They just process the results of the study, and then the FDA makes a decision on whether they're going to approve that or not, or whether it goes back to the drawing board, or whether you scrap it completely, or do you have to make these kinds of changes. So that's the advantage to having the CROs. So in about 5 or 6 patients, I went and said, well, where's the pharmacy? Where's the drugstore? And they showed me where it was, and I went down there and opened up the cabinet, and our drug was still sealed. It was still in the same packaging, hadn't been dispensed, hadn't been opened. Okay. Turned out that they were also working on another study for another company, and I won't mention the name because their drug got approved and it's on the market, and you might be taking it at some point. But their drug did work very well, much better than ours did. But they had almost the exact same protocol that we had. So they double dipped. They took these patients that were working for that company and made up false records to show that they were in our study. Well, I was a new guy and didn't know what to do, and I went and called my boss on the phone and said, what do I do? And she said, go grab that drug in the pharmacy and take it on the airplane with you and bring it back home. We'll never use that doctor ever again. And I said, well, can we take them to court? She said, no, it'll cost way too much money to go through suing them for falsification. We'll just make sure that they never do studies with us ever again. So that kind of stuff does happen, and that's why you have independent people to do that. So the second slide in this that is kind of interesting is the FDA phases in the process. Now, this is also where you might fall asleep, but I'll make it as painless as possible here. So you have, the first part is you have preclinical studies. These are usually laboratory studies. They are cell studies oftentimes, or they might be animal studies. It used to be back in the days when I started, they did research by giving drugs to a lot of different kinds of animals. They started out with rats, but they actually went up to rhesus monkeys and such. And a lot of animal rights people said, this is not good. And so that all changed. And pretty much rats are about the only thing that we hurt anymore. And pretty much with that, they don't hurt them either. They're just basically testing them to see if they have permission to watch what the short-term effects are on the animals. And so if they get this, if they're going to do this, they get permission from the FDA and say, here's the background we have. We'd like to submit this drug to try to do some studies with it. And so that's called an IND, an investigational new drug. Okay, now nothing's been approved yet. It's just saying you can go ahead and do these studies. So then you have a phase 1 study, which is a safety study. So I volunteered for a lot of these when I was working at Syntex, because you got paid good money to let them take a pill of naproxen sodium and see what that does. Does it help you with have any side effects? I didn't have any pain or anything at the time. So that's the idea, is you give it to healthy volunteers and you give them a small little dose and see how they react to it. And then maybe you increase the dose a little bit. So once you have that idea of this is how this works, that phase 1 study, the safety study, now you see that, okay, this drug is okay. It doesn't seem to cause any major side effects. Let's see if we can try it and see how effective it is on the drug works on the ailment that you have. So for mine, for instance, ulcer studies. So that goes to phase 2. How effective is the drug? So now they increase the amount to see basically the quality of life that you're getting from this drug. Is it working? If it's a pain study, are you feeling less pain when you take this drug? And then they're also testing the doses. You know, let's start out with 5 milligrams of it. Well, that didn't do anything. Well, let's try 10 milligrams. And so you have different doses you're going to try that drug to find out, okay, now we're having people saying they're having some pain in their stomach. Maybe they're having an ulcer because your pain drug is causing that as a side effect. Okay, then that's too high a dose. We don't want that. So we put it down here. So once they get through the effectiveness of it, then they go to phase 3. Now, phase 3 is the benefit of the drug. What's your quality of life? Is it working? Are you feeling better from it? And of course, with all of these, we're always looking at the side effects. So when you see those commercials on TV and say, take this drug, and it may cause death, and it may cause you losing power, and you may get blindness. Well, the idea is anything that's ever been reported, they're required to put on the warning label. How many people have died? Oh, 1 in 85 million, but they still have to put that on the label. It's a possibility. It could happen. So don't freak out when you see that kind of stuff, but that's what you have a doctor for, because your doctor knows all your history. Do you already have stomach problems or something? Then possibly this drug might affect your stomach, because the worst thing you can do is be taking 15 different drugs, and some of them are not going to interact with the other ones so well. So that's where you need a medical person to sit there and say, okay, this is okay. I was just talking to Alan about this just a little bit ago, because I have arthritis in my hands. I play guitar and sing. Yes, I'm not going to sing today.
Oh, darn
But at any rate, the pain gets so bad sometimes that I can't move my fingers so much. And so I have a drug that I take, but it's a steroid, and steroids aren't good to take for a long period of time. So I only take it when I have a flare-up. So that's something I know, because it can cause other problems, liver problems, which is something I do have some problems with my liver. So I want to be very careful about when I take that. That's the kind of stuff you need to be able to talk to your doctor about. So always do that. Okay, so now you've got all this stuff established, and you think you got a drug that's working great, and you submit it to the FDA, all of your findings. Statistically, these things can be 7 volumes of information. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but one of the things that I've learned with the FDA is we're really lucky we have the FDA in the United States. And I'm not a member of the FDA. I'm not here to cheer for them. But you can go to that, take that drug to so many different countries, and they'll approve it right away. And then you find out 2 years later that it causes cancer or this or that. And what our FDA does, this process takes so long, oftentimes 10 years from that phase 1 study until it's approved. It takes so long because of all the checks and the rechecks that we do. And that is because we want to make sure the drug is safe as possible. So when you see advertisements for this is going to help you lose weight, or this is going to take care of this or that on TV, look for little words of, is it FDA approved? Because so many people have things out there that I see on TV that it's not FDA approved, and you can take it and maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. But a study hasn't been done to say this is a safe drug, the FDA approves this is good and healthy for you to take. So after you submit this drug and then the FDA decides, you submit this, and it's called a new drug application. You might hear NDA a lot, that's what that is. It's a brand new drug, it's being submitted to the FDA. They look at it and they may say, well, like what we just went through with COVID. They said, well, this is working a little bit, but we want you to test it in more people because we're not getting a good enough sampling of people taking this drug. And so we want you to be really sure, we want you to enroll 2,000 more people in this study that still get the same results. And so then you go back, the company goes back and they try to do it some more to be able to prove that drug works or not. And if they do get it approved, now it goes to phase 4 studies. So now you can go maybe taking a leave in some study somewhere that has got a new indication that it helps hair growth or gives you extra muscle or whatever. So it's a different indication than what it was meant for. It's an already approved drug, but now we're going to say we want to claim that it also does this. So that's your post-marketing research. That's what the phase 4 study is. So if you're in a phase 4 study, you don't have to worry about side effects pretty much. It's just looking at, will this do something else that might be helpful as well? Now, one thing that you all might want to take into consideration is, as I pointed out, these studies go on for every ailment all over the place. So if ever you've got, let's say, a pain, arthritis like I have, you know, many of us probably do, and whatever you're taking isn't working so much, you might want to get online and look at doctors who are handling osteo or rheumatoid arthritis or whatever, and find out if they're doing research on a new drug. And what happens with these things is you can go to a doctor and be treated with a drug for free, not have to pay anything. In fact, they will pay you usually because you got to come in every other day or every 4 weeks or whatever, so that you can get free medication and be part of a study to see if it's going to help somebody else. And generally, they'll pay for your mileage. There's a guy up in Napa who does a whole lot of research. I can't remember what his name is, but you can Google it just under research studies. And maybe you've got, you know, endocrinologist, you know, if you've got diabetes, whatever it is, go look that up on the web and find out a doctor who might be in your area that's doing studies on that, and you may be part of something that may work really well for you. It may not be approved yet, but you might be in the ground level of finding out this works. You could be the person who figured out how to stop COVID, you know, that was great. I would be happy to take some questions, or if you want, you can write them down, and I'll be in contact with the group here for any questions you have. I'll be happy to help you. Again, I'm not a doctor. Yeah, go ahead.
In your research, have you ever run across where the study was being done and they dropped patients who may have had an adverse effect? How do you check for that?
That's an excellent question. Yes. If that's one of the things with the safety part of it. So we know what the side effects are that we're expecting from that drug. If a patient comes in and all of a sudden has atrial fibrillation, that's immediately reported to the FDA. We have 24 hours to report any incident that becomes a serious adverse event, which is life-threatening, or there's a definition of about 5 or 6 different things. Hospitalization would be another. Anything that you're not expecting to happen. That is required by the company and the doctor who's doing the study immediately, within 24 hours, to report that to the FDA.
What is the, if you will, punishment for, call it a patient drop? He's taking the drug, all of a sudden he has an adverse effect, he dies, and all of a sudden he's not part of the study anymore. And you run across this, I'm not saying you have, but as you say, it happens. Is there like a punishment for a company or somebody who's doing the study and they tried to hide it, an adverse effect?
Well, they can't hide it. That's the big thing. It's got to be reported right away. The patient might be dropped from the study, but the idea is if they're dropped from the study, the doctor's responsibility is to immediately treat that patient right away. No cost to the patient, and that's part of the consent form that you sign when you're doing the study, that if something happens to me, you're going to take care of me. So if you have to be hospitalized, and the study doesn't require hospitalization, but you come up with a serious adverse event, the doctor's responsibility is to make sure that you're treated so that you don't die.
So that's a study within the United States and under our laws.
Yep.
But what about studies that say are taking place in Africa?
Well,
Are they allowed to be part of the FDA approval process?
typically, we do have international studies, but they have to follow the same, if the sponsor company is in the United States or following the FDA. If it's going to be submitted to the FDA, then that country is responsible under the same jurisdiction that we have for what's being done in the United States. So yeah, we have plenty of studies in Japan, in India, Australia, South America, Canada, that are collecting data for these drugs, depending on the study, that is going to be reported through the same screening process, through the same rigorous results as we do in the United States.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, yeah.
Every night on TV, there's a campaign against fake beds. Do you have any idea what that's all about?
I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but one is the fentanyl thing going on right now. That it's a drug that people are addicted to, it's an opioid, and it's being sold on the street just like any other illegal drug. And the problem is it's made by some kid in his garage that makes it look like the real drug, and it's not, and kids overdose on it and die. Adults overdose on it and die. So basically, you can actually look up on the web. If you've got a drug, it should have some markings on it. It should say who makes it, or it should have some kind of a number on it or whatever, and you can go and compare that with a visual search. And if in doubt, ask your doctor. That's the bottom line. You shouldn't be buying something from somebody on the street. You should be buying it getting it from your doctor or from the pharmaceutical company, from the pharmacy.
Does a patient who's gotten the placebo ever know that the results of the trial?
Oh, good question. I didn't go through that part of it, but if you're signing a consent form to be in a study, you'll see the title of the study. And sometimes it'll say a double-blind study or a single-blind study in blah, blah, blah versus blah, blah, blah. So it may be one drug being compared to another drug to see, does Aleve work better than naproxen sodium? Oh, that is the same, sorry. One similar drug compared against another one. The company who's trying to, with the new drug, they want to show that their drug is better than the other person's drug. That's why you find so many drugs that are out there that do the same thing. Like for me, Aleve does not work for my arthritis pain, but Motrin does. They're both approved. And some work better for others. My sister has hip replacement. Aleve works great for her and doesn't do things for me.
What about thalidomide?
Okay,
Years ago, that was the big problem, and it was being treated for, I think, GERD or something else for pregnant women, and it just backfired, and they had birth defects and such. What happens when something like that happens to, or
Well,
Who's responsible for something like
you
that?
see the commercials all the time from law firms that'll tell you what's responsible.
The lawyers get into it.
Yes.
And once the lawyer's into it, then you know there's something going on. But the thing is that those kind of cases are much more rare in the United States than they are worldwide. And the other question was about placebo. So you sign a consent form saying you may be on this drug and you may be on placebo. And that's basically saying, okay, you may get something that looks just like what you think you're taking, but if it's double blind, that means the doctor doesn't know which one you're getting. The doctor has a randomization of patients 1 through 10, and 5 of those patients are going to get active drug, and 5 of them are going to get placebo. And that's so there's no bias. So you can prove that, look, this many patients on placebo, it didn't do anything for them, but the patients that were on the active drug, it did do something for them. That's something to help prove to the FDA that your drug really works.
All right, I see 3 questions. Robert was first.
Yeah, well, I had a question, but I never did hear the answer to his. The question he asked, I think, was, the person that is taking the placebo, does he ever find out that he's taking the placebo? Is that what you asked?
You can find out, but that won't be until after it's been, when it's over.
Yes.
Because the doctor doesn't find out either. The doctor has nothing to do other than turn in the results of what they found at the site.
Okay, well, now my question was, with this COVID epidemic, I heard you say it takes sometimes 10 years to get approval. How are they able to fast track that if it takes so much time to make sure that it doesn't damage a person in some way or another? You know, we all hear the rumors about, you know, the COVID thing causing you to be impotent or die, whatever. So how are they able to do that so fast and still meet the requirements?
Well, that's the whole thing, is it was fast forward because they found out that with intense, there was a lot of, there was research like never has been done before.
Right.
You know, this is an emergency, we gotta find something.
Yeah, they removed.
So they put in tons of people, and the requirements weren't as stringent as far as the safety of the drug.
Okay.
Now, we may find out that what we've been taking for COVID 10 years down the road has this side effect or that side effect. And you can hear, don't listen to anything but what the CDC says. Forget what they say on social media.
Right.
Because there are so many times when people get a little information and you get a bunch of garbage out there that's not true.
Little knowledge is a dangerous thing.
People, my wife is almost became a nurse. She works in medical research as well. But it's so funny because something happens and she really pulls out, looks on the physician's desk reference, PDR. And you want to read that and it'll scare you about it taking an aspirin. But it can be very useful for you to get a little idea to yourself, do I want to take this or not? But that's what you got doctors for. Yes, sir.
Like the oxycodone pill, weren't the pharmacies or doctors paid to push that out, and it got out of hand?
What was that one more time?
Oxycodone, weren't the doctors paid or pharmacies paid to push that out? So
Yep. Again, that's the same thing. Get the lawyers involved, because those doctors are met constantly with drug representatives from different companies. The days of them taking the doctor out to lunch and getting them front row seats for the 49ers game, that kind of stuff can't happen anymore. It used to happen.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little to the Naperson studies. I worked for a competitor at the time, and we were sending stuff off to this private laboratory for biological studies. Naperson was too, and they discovered by the FDA inspection that certain safety tests had been sort of faked, and rabbits got fed after their autopsy, things like this.
Yeah.
You know, we were panicking. I'm sure Syntax was panicking, and
Yep.
maybe you can add a bit to it, but We did repeat tests, and I'm sure Syntex did too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's a good point in that this was 1974. We have grown quite a bit since then with how we do research and how drugs are approved and such. And yeah, there was stuff going on under the table and some falsification going on. It's not as much now. It still could be improved more.
How come they don't put FDA approved on the bottle you get from the pharmacy?
I'd have to look at the bottle on the, you have an insert of that drug, and it will tell you in that.
Have you ever read those inserts?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And that's the scary thing, is reading those inserts. They come out 14 pages long sometimes, but.
My question about this new COVID vaccine, the question is, didn't we all sign a agreement to not sue in order to take this drug, right? Because
Yeah.
that was the big, why Trump got it through, was because he said, hey, we're gonna get this fast track, but you can't sue if 10 years later you develop cancer from this drug. You have to accept the consequences, unlike all the other drugs that you could sue. Is that true or not? I mean, I don't know.
No, partially, what it is when you sign a consent form, you'll find there used to be only a page long or so. I'm going to take this drug and this is what it does and these are the only side effects we know. Now a consent form for any study you're in is probably 14 pages long. And it is a requirement, and I check when I'm there at the site to make sure the patient has signed this and that the doctor has notarized that they have counseled the patient and answered every single question that patient has. It does say that you agree to do this study, and these are the things that could happen to you that have been reported. Do you want to be voluntarily in this study? So you have now said, I'm going to take whatever comes to me, and I'm okay with that.
Is that what we did for the COVID vaccine that we got?
Yeah, you probably had to sign a consent form, I'm pretty sure.
So I just wonder how many people actually do that they actually signed.
You know, and there are so many people that walk in and say, well, we have professional donors, or whatever you want to call them, or professional participants that maybe have arthritis pain, and they find this doctor's doing this arthritis study, and that doctor's doing that one, and they lie, because you're not supposed to be doing two studies at the same time. And you, in fact, that's one of the things it says in the consent form, that I will not participate in another trial while I'm in this one.
Isn't it true that when the COVID vaccines were developed, that they went through phase 1, 2, and 3, and that in phase 2, which is a limited person study, that would have had a very long consent form listing all the ramifications of it. But once it's gone through, say, I think it was 30,000 people in phase 1, then they approved it as an emergency authorization.
Correct.
For the general population in phase 3.
Correct.
All right, so it had gone through like 30,000 patients, and they had a lot of data about if there was any adverse reactions over a period of like 6 months or a year. I forget what the period was. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is correct. And that's not the ideal way to do a study. But when you got an epidemic you're looking for, we need something now. We don't need, 10 years of research on it. And we don't have a complete, what's the word I'm looking for? We don't have a complete listing of all the adverse events that people could have at that point. We have enough information to know that this works. And we're going to keep gathering data. Now, what's gonna happen now, and I'm sure you probably all realize it, is like the flu shot that you get every year. At some point, you're probably gonna be, because COVID continues to change and change and change, and you're gonna end up having a different shot next year than you would this year. And I know that one of the things that's going on right now is that they are trying to collect as much information as they can to try to maybe combine your flu shot and your COVID shot into one shot that you get each year. Wouldn't that be great? So I think I've taken up a lot of time. If you got any questions, by all means, go ahead and get them to me through the things here. And I appreciate all of you listening to me. I hope I didn't bore you too much.